Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Author of Your Own Story show. I am super excited for this health edition, this special edition to bring on a health and wellness expert, Brian Gryn, who has taken me on a journey of something that's new for me even in my health and fitness quest, and that is intermittent fasting. Now, Brian has been a fitness professional for a very long time, but his specialty, or the reason I asked him to come on today, is he has produced an intermittent fasting journal that goes along with his coaching programs. And it was what allowed me to jumpstart my journey into intermittent fasting. And Brian, as you know, and I'll let the listeners know, as a fitness professional myself, my history is intermittent fasting was something that I felt that I just couldn't keep getting on until I used your program in your journal. So thank you so much for accepting my invitation to be on.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I'm excited to be here, and looking forward to talking about health, intermittent fasting, and anything else that comes up. So
Awesome. Yeah, you're such a good sport. You're willing to talk about anything that we wanted to bring up here. So I appreciate that. Well, Brian, I know a lot about your background, of course, since we were working together. But let's let our listeners know. Tell us a little bit about your story, your journey, and how you got to the point to be able to not only develop a children's book, but and other products, but also really, how did you get into intermittent fasting and what you're doing now?
yeah, coming out of college, I actually started in health and actually didn't start right away in health and wellness. I was in banking, and I think I just realized that I wanted to do something I was passionate about and something that I believed in. So got into health and wellness, started training out of a small studio, and from there started realizing that probably 80-90% of the piece of the puzzle of helping people lose weight was focusing on nutrition and what they're putting in their bodies. From there, I started to learn more about fasting and started studying it myself, and had a few clients who got really great results, myself included. And so that got me on sort of the journey of intermittent fasting. And from there, I just decided to dive right in. I wrote a journal, and I've been coaching clients, helping them with weight loss, energy, mental acuity, whatever else they need. And so, yeah, it's been a great journey. I think a combination, obviously, of working out, clean eating, and intermittent fasting is the way to go. So, so here we are today.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things I want to unpack there. And one is I do want to talk about your journey and how you've chosen to follow your passion and how and that road that you did and what was the big decision there. But before we get into the nuts and bolts about that, let's give the listeners and the people watching this a taste on, you mentioned results. And in the fitness industry, you hear that all the time, nutrition results, et cetera, et cetera. And I can speak about my results, but tell me what results your clients typically get and that you found in yourself.
Yeah, I'll speak for myself. I was a fairly clean eater, worked out 4 times a week, and I just found as I got older, it just got more difficult. And I think this was the case for a lot of the clients that I worked with. So I needed something to sort of step up my game. My weight loss plateau sort of peaked, that happens to a lot of people. And there's one aspect that I never really focused on, and that is when you should eat. Not necessarily, I think in the media, in the news, in the mainstream, we always talk about, well, what should we eat? And there's a new superfood every other day. So when I started studying intermittent fasting, it really focused on when you should eat. And that really intrigued me. So I just started using it on myself along with a few clients, and found that for myself, I lost a couple inches on my waist, and my abs started to show. Also, I felt just more energetic throughout the day, less highs and lows, and my clients did too. So I really started focusing on when you should eat. Also what, but a combination of both.
So let's tell the listeners and the people here, what is intermittent fasting?
It's really just a voluntary act of not eating, abstinence of food, really. People, I think there's maybe a fearfulness out there regarding like when they hear fasting, they think like starvation. This is a voluntary act of not eating. So, which we all go through, because obviously you fast when you're sleeping. And so we all do it. I guess we just don't realize we're doing it for 8 hours or however many hours we're sleeping. So intermittent fasting is just doing it for a portion throughout the day. And then there's longer fasts. There's many different ways you can sort of do it and cater to your needs and your lifestyle.
So it is customizable based on the person. Is that right?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. And so I know when you and I were working together and I was going through the journal itself, you give a lot of leeway for people in there, but is there a typical way that people start? Is there a certain, a procedure or a certain number of hours through the day that people usually don't eat?
Well, I mean, we all have heard that like breakfast is the most important part of the most important meal of the day. And for someone that does intermittent fasting, not a true believer in that. So what I did with the journal was take advantage of your fasting that you've done overnight and just continue that on throughout the day instead of breaking your fast at breakfast and then having to sort of start your fast later. So you just take advantage of the overnight fast and then go, typically, if you want to say a typical one that's out there and the one that I teach in the journal is 16-8, where you would fast for 16 hours and then you'd be in an 8-hour feeding window. So.
And during that 8-hour window, can I eat anything I want?
I would say this. No. I will say you get better results if you eat clean and you eat whole foods and stay away from a lot of like refined sugars and things like that. But I would say someone that's new to fasting, that's never done it before, I would first clean up your eating first and foremost. And obviously many ways to do that, but mainly eat whole foods and stay away from like refined sugars and pastries and desserts and things like that. Clean up your food and eating first. And then from there, you can get into intermittent fasting. And it'll be easier to do it as well, because when you're eating refined sugars and pastries and bread and pastas, you're taking your insulin and blood sugar levels on a roller coaster as it is. And the whole goal of intermittent fasting is to get your insulin levels down. So first clean up the eating, then get into intermittent fasting and close that window of when you're actually eating.
So insulin levels, right? I can see people's eyes glazing over. What the heck are they?
Yeah, I mean, so you have your blood sugar, you have your insulin levels. They somewhat go hand in hand. Insulin essentially is a hormone that it's a way for your body to just, your body regulates your insulin levels. And so when you're eating, essentially whatever you eat, your insulin levels will rise. Now, technically, refined carbs and things that are starchy will raise your insulin levels more. And then you start storing everything as body fat. And so people are insulin resistant, pretty much they've taken their insulin on a ride and they have a tough time necessarily. Their body doesn't know what to do with that amount of insulin. And so they're putting on body fat. When you're in a fasted state, your body uses its own energy. So essentially, you'll use your body fat as energy eventually when you're fasting. And that's the whole goal, is to use your own stores instead of just using food as energy.
And so I know a lot in the conventional fitness world, a big concern or a big reason you eat every 2 to 3 hours, the old axiom that many of us have heard before, was to prevent muscle loss, right? Having branched chain amino acids readily in the bloodstream. So with intermittent fasting, you're taking 16 hours or longer, or depending on the methodology you use, but to use that 16-8 example, what are some ways, or do you even find it necessary for people to be concerned with, actually, lean body mass and the maintenance of that?
Yeah, I think going to your question, a concern for people is that they think they're going to lose muscle and they'll start using muscle as energy. But your body will first go to your glycogen storage first, which is in your liver. And then, but your body, the only time your body will get into your muscle to use that as energy is if you have like 4% body fat or less. And that's very rare. So I think the concern over like using your muscle as energy is false. And you will, I do find just with my own body and with other clients, you might maybe lose a little bit of muscle, but you're losing body fat as well, and you're getting more cut. So I think it's a good trade-off all in all.
Yeah, I personally, since started working through your journal and now intermittent fasting has just become a lifestyle for me, and people ask me about it all the time. I personally supplement with branched chain amino acids first thing in the morning and then post workout, because I work out in the morning. It's just the best with my schedule, so I can wrestle with my son and spend time with him. So I supplement with those. And I found that I haven't had any issues with, and it might not be the branched chain amino acids, right? It's just kind of my own little safety net that I've implemented for myself. But I haven't experienced any muscle loss based on that. Do you find that clients often supplement with the BCAAs?
Yeah, some do. I don't like. It's not like in the journal. It's not something that maybe I would tell everyone to do. But yeah, I mean, for sure, especially if you are being really physically active, it's definitely not a bad way to supplement your workouts. But I find like most of my energy is just from, I think mainly if we're eating all day, all the blood's going to our digestive organs and working really hard. And so I think it's a great way to sort of rest your digestive organs as well, is another sort of bonus for intermittent fasting as well. So.
Oh, absolutely. And you have a newsletter that you put out, which you send out weekly, and I always love reading because, I've been in the fitness industry for over 20 years now, which is hard to believe. And you start thinking, yeah, I'm not going to learn anything new at this point. But you come up with these little tidbits here and there that I find really interesting. That's why I continue to read it out of the newsletters that I get. And you mentioned a couple things about fasting and some of the links to cancer and to other health benefits. And I know you're not a doctor. I know you're not making any health claims. But based on some of the research and reading that you've done, besides just fat loss, which I'm guessing most people listening to this, the ears perked up right away when you talk about it, and that's been my experience as well. What are some of the other benefits that people may get through fasting or intermittent fasting?
Yeah, so essentially, like when you're in a fasted state, you're sort of in a heightened awareness. So there are studies done where adrenaline is increased and growth hormone is increased when you're in a fasted state. And that's why actually there's quite a community out there of bodybuilders that have gotten intermittent fasting, especially when they're trying to get cut for a competition. So there are studies done where your growth hormone will stay the same, might even increase when you're in a fasted state. So that's a huge one. Like I mentioned before, if you're eating all the time, obviously your digestive organs are always at work, and when you're in a fasted state, you get to rest your digestive organs. For some people, it will actually help them. It's important to go regularly, obviously, and it'll sort of help clean them out as well. So
you're talking about go to the bathroom.
Yes, go to the bathroom.
Okay. Just want to make sure everybody, I knew what you're talking about. I want to make sure everybody else is listening to this knows. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say clear thinking. I mean, me personally, I've done some longer fasts. I actually find that towards the end of maybe like a day fast, I actually have the most mental acuity that I have throughout the entire day. And I'm sure we all know, if you work at an office job, you eat, you sort of crash. Even if you eat something healthy, sometimes you still feel sort of that lag. I can feel it sometimes in myself, even though I eat pretty clean. So, people for looking for mental acuity, it's a great way to stay sharp.
Yeah, well, I mean, the big thing right now at anybody's Facebook feed or Instagram or Twitter or whatever are neurotropics, right? Everybody's trying to get that edge, the limitless pill. And I know when I fasted, and I hear it from you and a lot of the people that mentors that I have and people that I coach, they're doing intermittent fasting specifically, not even for fat loss, but for that mental acuity that you're talking about. Is you just seem a little sharper. You seem a little bit more on edge. And it's almost like this primitive thing kicks in where your body's like, okay, there's not food here readily available per se, and I need to step up my senses. Do you find that with your clients as well, that they're constantly commenting that they're feeling sharper, they're feeling like even at work, they're able to achieve more?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's an adjustment period though. I will say, so if someone is listening and they want to try it, and maybe the first few days, they actually might lose some energy because their body's just not used to it. So you got to give it some time. You got to be patient. I mean, with my journal, it's 21 days. And I mean, 21 days, sort of arbitrary. I mean, it could take a week to adjust. It could take months, depending on where you're at in sort of your life and your health cycle. But yeah, no, it takes time. But another thing, a benefit that I found with clients is they sort of realize what true hunger is. I think we're on this like clock, our body clock, where we're programmed to eat at certain times, and that can be good and bad, right? Obviously, in the state of emergencies, when we don't have food readily available, and we're used to eating at certain times, we can get these hunger pains and things like that. But when you do intermittent fasting, you realize that true hunger is when you're getting a hunger pain, that really isn't true hunger. That's just your body getting used to eating at a certain time. And so, I don't know, I just think you're more in tune with your body when you do intermittent fasting and sort of its needs and what true hunger really is.
When I shared this with you a while ago when I first went through the journal, is I found that to be true. And that's what shocked me the most, is how culturally conditioned I was to eat at very specific times. All of a sudden I would get hangry and I look down and be like, yep, it's 7 o'clock, in the morning, and yep, same times throughout the day. It only took me probably 3 days to get over that. And then it seemed to be smooth sailing. And the other times when I wasn't journaling, and I think journaling the process that I liked is, one, it kept me accountable. 2, it was easy for me. But 3 is it kept me focused, let my mind kind of get out what was going on and when it was happening to me. And I really noticed right away, as soon as I wrote it down, what was happening. I looked forward to that time, that window that you gave me. Then it was just so much easier. It was kind of like, wow. It's kind of an aha moment, I would say.
Yeah, and I would just say, if you do get those hunger pains, I always recommend like a hot tea or hot coffee. You can have, as long as there's no sweeteners, you can have like a green tea or a black coffee, and that'll sort of help get you through that moment. You'll notice sometimes if I'm in a fast throughout the day, and it's like, let's say for me, I usually break my fast around noon. If I start feeling those hunger pains and I want to keep going, I'll just have like a hot beverage and like a tea or coffee. And then by the time I know it, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm cool. And I'm good for the remainder or however long I'm going to fast. So.
Well, that's great. And these studies have come out recently, even more so, and they're more concrete about the injection of, sugar substitutes, right? People take a sugar substitute and their actual test scores go down, not up, whereas someone has natural sugar. When someone's doing intermittent fasting, I know there's different kind of rules or schools of thought. Can they add coffee in the morning, or does that count as breaking the fast? And can they add things like stevia or, sweeteners that don't have any calories? What's your experience on those?
I usually recommend, just if you're going to, black coffee or tea, no sweeteners, even if it's like a low calorie or no calorie sweetener. Even though it might not even raise any insulin levels, I would recommend, if there's another benefit of fasting, is something called autophagy, which is like a cell cleanse for your body. And there's still studies out there that might be differentiating each other, but typically they say to get into autophagy, it's at least a few days of fasting, and they actually recommend just water. So it just depends what you're looking for. If you're just doing it, let's just say, to get into some good habits, black tea or green tea or black coffee, no sweeteners, is the way to go. If you're looking for like something a little bit more and you want to get into autophagy, and there's stuff out there that you can research, but typically it's 3 to 5 days, and and it's just water, so it's hardcore. So.
It is hardcore. I have a friend of mine who is a chiropractor who also does very heavy lifting, and I saw him towards the tail end of his water fast, and I'll say he was hurting a little bit during that one. It was a little tough, and he was putting the weights down. Now, you also, in your newsletter, you talk a lot about more than just intermittent fasting, right? You talk about all kinds of health and wellness topics. And, what about somebody adding something like apple cider vinegar, right, to their water? Is that something you recommend? Are there benefits to doing that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there's a lot of research on apple cider vinegar. I mean, I think the reason I start implementing apple cider vinegar with my water when I started fasting is there's substances, some such as like pectin, that sort of help you like stay full. And so they might help. So if you're getting into fasting and you want sort of another way, just get some apple cider vinegar, sprinkle a little bit, not too much, into your water, and you'll find that'll sort of help you stay fulfilled and throughout the day as well. So, but we could probably have a whole podcast on apple cider vinegar. there's people use it for a lot of things, all the way to like cleaning their teeth. So,
I'm a believer. I use it as well. And you and I'm lucky enough to be able to talk to you, and you're infamous for your Pyrex glass cup that I always love you having and joke about, which I'm sure you have. There it is. If anybody's watching this, you see it. If not, he's taking a drink now using apple cider vinegar. Well, Brian, I want to switch gears a little bit, and maybe at the end we can come back with some tips or have you on again, because I know we're just scratching the surface with intermittent fasting as it is. But I also know that there's some listeners out here that also want to know, how does this guy go from banking to a complete switch, right? It would be almost like a complete 90-degree turn into following his passion and being the author of his own story and going after his dreams. Was there one turning point, one decision? Did you dip your toe in first before you dove in, or did you just like, hey, I'm diving right in?
Yeah. So I would say for me, I started. My theory is it never hurts to have the best time to have a backup plan is when you don't need it.
Yeah.
So I think that's like a good motto to go by. So I don't know if you're at a gym or at the office and there's something that you're passionate about. Personally, I would start doing it right away, but you can do it on the side. And that's sort of how I started doing a lot of this. I mean, I got into the health and fitness industry and started training, and then I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and have, books and journals and things like that and coaching. But I sort of did both. I trained clients and I also started creating journals and content on the side. So, whatever you're doing and whatever you're passionate about, I definitely recommend start it now. Don't wait. It doesn't have to be just like one day you just suddenly turn into this entrepreneur. This could be something. There's so many resources online now. I think you can start part-time and build sort of what you're passionate about while you're also making a living if you have just like a regular job.
There you go. Build it before you need it, right? And often people call it a side hustle or something else that you want to do, but it doesn't have to be a hustle. It could be something you're just passionate about that you carve out half an hour a day for fun and start building. And it could be like, someone like yourself that is not only building a product, but you're changing people's lives out there. I mean, you have the ability through your journal, through your coaching, to make a big impact on the world. And we haven't even talked about your children's book and other books and other things that you're up to. And I know you go to read to schools and it lights you up, but you're making a greater impact in the world while living your dream. And I think that's commendable and something that everybody, I'll just say everybody listening to us talk wants to do in their life. And so many people are scared of stepping forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been a good journey. I'm very fortunate. And I'll just say, also what really helps is getting a coach, someone like Doug, who's been in the industry. I know he's been in a lot of, internet and health and fitness and now he coaches, but to find a mentor, someone that's done it before you, I think is such an important thing. Because it's really not about, I mean, yes, you want to pave your own way, but if you can find someone that's done it before you and then just follow in their footsteps, it can, and learn from what they did and their mistakes. I think that's just a great stepping stone to help you find, your passion and become an entrepreneur.
Well, thanks for the plug. It's not something I was looking for or asking for, but I appreciate it. But, people always hear me say, find a coach, find a mentor, find somebody who's been down that path ahead of you to guide you and learn from their mistakes and shorten your gap, right? There's always a gap between where we are today and where we want to go. Otherwise, we'd be there. And figure out what that gap is and somebody who can shorten that gap and condense it so it doesn't take you 10 years and you can do it in a shorter period of time along that journey. They're not going to do the work for you. right? And your situation is always going to be different than the next person's, but they're going to help you get clarity around that. And as entrepreneurs, especially, we always hear, I feel like I'm an island, right? And that's kind of the thing. So there's mastermind groups, coaches, there's a lot of things out there, but, and you've been smart to take advantage of a lot of those going along your journey. Other intermittent fasting tips, takeaways. If somebody's listening to this, they're like, cool, this sounds like something I'm interested in, or I've read that all these Hollywood actors are doing intermittent fasting, or it's the biggest thing in my CrossFit box, what have you. What are, the top 3 to 5 tips you would say for someone to take action right away with?
Well, for one, I'll just say this with intermittent fasting is I liked it because of the simplicity of it. I just think we're inundated with so much information about what to eat, and really just keep it simple. This is simply just shortening your window of eating. And so just start with that. If you notice yourself eating throughout the entire day, just try to shorten that window up. And a tip I would say is just, I do a 16-8 where I'm fasting for 16 hours and eating for 8 hours typically. But, find a window that fits your lifestyle. And I know, dinner is a big deal in a lot of for, dinner with your family and stuff. So that would be my first tip, is find a window that fits your lifestyle. A second tip would be when you feel hunger coming on, have a warm beverage. I think that really helps. A tea or coffee, unsweetened. Another tip would be that if you don't feel good, just eat. If you're starting out and you just listen to your body. I think people think they're forcing themselves. I mean, just go with how you feel. There's definitely an adjustment period, but that's the one thing I like about intermittent fasting is you can do it anywhere. It's simple. It's cheap. You're not buying some special potion. So just keep it simple. Start slow. In the journal, I actually have you push back breakfast an hour every day until it becomes, till about noon. So that's how I started. And you might be able to just do it right away, but I started where I just pushed it back once an hour. So start slow would be a good tip as well. So.
Great tips, you guys. And listening to Brian, who's worked with a lot of people, online and through his journal, those are great things. And Brian, you also have, I'm privy to know because I'm in the group and working with you. You also have a Facebook group, a community platform that you utilize, as well as your newsletter. And where are other ways that people can find out more about intermittent fasting and more about what you're up to?
Yeah, I would just say my website, briangryn.com. So BRINGRYN.com. There they can look through learn about the journal, learn about myself and coaching. I do one-on-one coaching. And then the free Facebook group is Get Lean Club is another way to sort of be part of a community of people who are looking to get into fasting or just looking to get healthy in general. So those would be the two. And through my website, you could just subscribe to my weekly newsletter and I spit out content every week, every Thursday. So.
Yep. I wouldn't say you spit out content. You do. And I'm not saying this to stroke your ego, but I've had the benefit of getting thousands of newsletters, and most of them I just unsubscribe or I filter them. And you seem to come up with unique content each and every week. And I thank you for that. And you've heard me say that before, so I won't go on it too long. But you really do put out great content, and it's not promotional content. It's really informative. You let people know about your website or events or things that are coming up, but it's 99% just great practical content that people can use that week. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I just try to put out content that people can use in a day-to-day life and not keep it too complicated. So keep it simple. So.
Awesome, Brian. Well, thank you so much for being on. I mean, I know we get so many questions about intermittent fasting, and I know I'm going to get a flood more coming in. And everybody reach out to Brian. He's extremely accessible and a great guy. I'm sure you'll see him in the media a lot, but you can also reach out to him, which I also appreciate about you and your personality and the true desire you want to have to help people. But Brian, I'm definitely going to want you back on for part 2, where we can go over some more advanced techniques with intermittent fasting later on as these questions start to pile in. And that way you can field them instead of me trying to just fumble my way through. So thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy day to be with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I appreciate it.
At Author of Your Own Story, we believe in taking a holistic approach to your health, where you aren't just physically healthy, but your entire mind, body, and soul is operating at its most optimal level. To get started in creating holistic health, download our free holistic health checklist at authorofyourownstory.com/body-gift. And don't forget to be the author of your own story.